Welcome to Healthy Living. Today, a story of faith, hope, and action. You're going to meet a man who, as a young medical student, nearly died 5 times from a rare disease with no cure. He was so close to death that he said goodbye to his family, and a priest was called to his hospital room to administer last rites. But believe it or not, after doctors threw in the towel, he himself determined to find his own cure, which he did. It's all in his memoir, Chasing My Cure, by David FAJGENBAUM. So take us back to the 3rd year of medical school. When did you first know something was wrong with your health?
So I had been in total perfect state of health, had even been a college athlete, no problems, and there I was as a 3rd year medical student. I was on my obstetrics rotation, had just delivered babies for the first time, humans coming into life. It was just amazing. And then over the course of just a couple weeks, I started feeling more tired than usual, started noticing abdominal pain, and then fluid accumulating in my legs, which just seemed so unusual. Didn't know what it was, but I kept getting more and more tired. And so I took an obstetrics exam and took my written exam and went straight from my exam to the emergency department because I just knew something was wrong. I didn't know what, but I knew something really serious. And they did blood work and told me, David, your liver, your kidneys, and your bone marrow are shutting down. We don't know why. We need to hospitalize you right away.
And how did you respond to that emotionally?
It was terrifying. You know, as a medical student, you know a little bit about health and medicine, you know a little bit about what abnormal lab tests are, but all of a sudden, as a patient, and you see those same lab tests that you've just learned about and what those could actually mean, it was terrifying, and especially the unknown. At this stage, no diagnosis, and it would be many weeks before we got one.
When you finally got the diagnosis, what was it?
So 11 weeks in, I was so sick at that stage that I had been moved in the intensive care unit, and I was on life support, and I was getting daily transfusions, was on dialysis, but so sick that actually my family was encouraged to say their goodbyes, and a priest came in to administer my last rites to me. I was so sick, but fortunately, a day before, I was diagnosed with idiopathic multicentric Castleman disease, a rare immune system disorder that's kind of like a cross between an autoimmune disease and a cancer, and we don't actually know which category to put it into. And basically, the immune system attacks your vital organs for an unknown cause. There are about 5,000 patients diagnosed each year in the U.S. with Castleman disease, and about 1/3 of those patients with my subtype of Castleman disease will die within 5 years of diagnosis. Another 1/3 will die within 10 years of diagnosis.
So you thought maybe that was the end, or that not long after you had first started exhibiting your first symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, getting the diagnosis, we so badly wanted a diagnosis while I was sick for those 11 weeks, and then when we got the diagnosis, we were devastated by what I was now diagnosed with. This is such a poorly understood and such a serious disorder that we were terrified and really just sad that we were going through this. I had lost my mom to cancer several years before, and we'd gone through this journey of having a diagnosis of someone we love, a serious diagnosis, and hearing about the statistics and what we could expect was really scary for us.
When the priest came in and administered last rites and you said goodbye to your family, what was that like?
So it was really scary for me. It was a time of for me, probably the biggest feeling that I had was as I looked back on my life. So, you know, now I've had my last rites read to me. I've said goodbye to my family. I was prepared in the sense that, you know, I had said those goodbyes, but then the next thing I did was turn to kind of reflecting on my life, you know, what I had done, what I hadn't done. And what I found was that I didn't regret anything that I had done in my life. I didn't regret anything that I had said. The things that I regretted were things that I hadn't said or things that I hadn't done and that I wouldn't be able to do. I had dated an incredible person named Caitlin before I got sick, and we had broken up just a few months before, and I thought we had all the time in the world. And I said, it's okay that we're not together. If it's meant to be, we'll get back together. We've got plenty of time. And then there I was on my deathbed and was fully aware that I didn't have more time, and I just regretted that I didn't make the most of the time that I could have had with her. I regretted that I wasn't going to, or I mourned that I wasn't going to be able to get married and have a family and experience those special moments. And so when I started to feel better, when I got treated with chemotherapy and that started to make me feel better, I was just so grateful for every day. And I started to live with this motto that I say, it's think it, do it. And that's that, things that you want to do, that you think are the right things to do, is telling someone you love them, being there for people. Don't talk yourself out of them.
When you received your chemotherapy, you started improving, but then you had many setbacks, right? And that started you on your journey to figure out what was really wrong with you and really come up with your own treatment, right?
That's exactly right. So just, first almost dying, getting a diagnosis, this was just the beginning. I got the diagnosis right around the second time that I almost died, which is when I had my last rites read to me. And then, unfortunately, as you said, I continued to relapse over and over and over again. I've had a total of 5 of these deadly hospitalizations where we didn't think I was going to survive. And with each one of these relapses, I have learned a different lesson about life. I learned a lot from these experiences. I learned a lot about life and living from nearly dying each time. And for me, it was by the third episode, and by the third time I almost died, I realized that I live in overtime. And it's this sense that, in overtime, every second counts. If you make a mistake in the first quarter of a game, you've got plenty of time to make it up. But when you're in overtime, you really have to make the most of your time. And it's a sense of urgency that I live with to really make every second count. But by my 4th time, when I had another relapse, I was on an experimental drug, and I had been so hopeful that this drug was going to be my solution and that it was going to keep me in remission. It was the miracle that my mom never had, but that I would be able to have with this treatment. And unfortunately, when I relapsed and I talked to my doctor, who's the world's expert about Castleman disease, and I learned that there were no other drugs in development and that there were no promising leads, I was devastated to hear kind of where things stood. But that's when I realized that the things that I was hoping for and I was praying for daily, a cure, a treatment, something, I realized that they were not on their way and that they wouldn't happen unless I turned my hope and my prayers into action. And so I turned to my dad and my sisters after my doctor walked out of the room. At the time I was getting infused with chemotherapy, but I told them, I said, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life, however long that may be, to trying to develop treatments and a cure for this disease. And since then, that's been what I've been fighting to do.
How did you begin? Because really, you only had the knowledge of a third-year medical student.
You're exactly right. I mean, when I first started out, I certainly had no guarantees. And to be honest, I probably didn't believe that I really was ever going to be able to make that much progress. But I felt that if it was something that I really cared about, if it was something that I was wishing for, I was praying for, and I was hoping for, that I really needed to do the best I could to turn that into action. I kind of needed to go out swinging and do what I could to turn this into action and to maybe turn this hope into reality.
So after David made the decision to go out swinging, as he put it, the hard work began. How could this third-year medical student find a cure when experts with more knowledge and experience couldn't? The answer right after this.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
It's what starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
In a rare move, David FAJGENBAUM decided to use his knowledge and connections as a third-year medical student to try to develop a cure for his deadly disease before it killed him. Here's how it began.
And so the first thing I did was connect with an incredible mentor at the University of Pennsylvania, Arthur Rubenstein, and to craft a plan for how we would push forward research. Research typically, especially in the rare disease space, moves forward by raising money and then inviting researchers to apply to use the money how they see fit. And that works really well when you've got lots and lots of researchers applying for the funding. But when you just have 2 or 3 researchers for a given rare disease, it's really unlikely that one of those 2 researchers is going to be the world's expert for a given type of research and know exactly what needs to be done. And so we said, instead of raising money and then kind of hoping that the right person applies, let's build a network of physicians, researchers, and patients. Let's let that network prioritize what we should do, and then let's go out and find the right person. It really falls in line with this turning hope into action, is that, you know, if we want to hope for a treatment or a cure for this disease, let's make it happen. Let's find the right person to do it.
Mm-hmm. And so what type of progress did you make?
Well, we made a lot of progress on that front. We were able to, just in the last 7 years, we've invested about $1 million into research, which has led to the first novel therapeutic target in 25 years, so the first target that you can develop a drug against. We developed the first diagnostic criteria, the first treatment guidelines. The $1 million that we've spent on research has resulted in an additional $7 million between the federal government and additional foundations. So we've been able to turn what's relative to a lot of other research areas, a relatively small amount, into a significant portion of funding and also significant progress. And in parallel to building this foundation, the Castleman Disease Collaborative Network, I also began conducting laboratory research myself at the University of Pennsylvania. At the time, there were no Castleman's researchers at Penn, but a colleague of mine provided me the space to do Castleman's research, and I really rolled up my sleeves, and I worked on the samples that I had the easiest access to, which were my own.
That's fantastic. So do you feel like you've come up with a treatment that works for you and for other people with Castleman's?
That's right. So working in the lab, it actually was after my 5th one of these deadly flares. So at this stage, my wife and I were now engaged, and we dreamed about a wedding date. We hoped for a wedding date. I knew that I had and still have a very serious disease, so I knew that this disease could come back at any time and that nothing was guaranteed. But we dreamed of making it to our wedding day in May of 2014. But in November of 2013, I had my 5th one of these deadly flares, and I nearly died again. I was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and spent weeks hospitalized. Fortunately, chemotherapy saved my life, just barely, but at that stage I had now failed to respond to any drugs that had ever been tried for Castleman's, and even drugs that had never been tried for Castleman's were not working for me. And so that's when I really dug into the data that I'd been generating. I'd been working in the lab for about a year. I'd been storing samples from my own blood and lymph node over the course of the last year, and I started running experiments on them, and I had a real sense of urgency. I knew this disease could come back at any moment. Can I find something in my data, something in my samples that could lead me to maybe say that a new drug could be used against this thing? And what I found was that the immune system is really complex with a number of communication lines, one of which is called the mTOR pathway. It's a way that immune cells communicate with one another. And I found that that particular communication line was turned into overdrive on my samples. And at first I was kind of puzzled about, what does this mean? But then I realized that there's a drug that targets the mTOR pathway. And so not only did I find this thing was up, I now realized that there was a drug that was developed 25 years ago for kidney transplantation. It had never been used before for Castleman's, but I thought just maybe this drug for one disease could actually help me with my Castleman disease. And so I started on this drug, sirolimus, 5.5 years ago, and now it's been 5.5 years that I've been feeling great and in remission. We've given this drug to other Castleman's patients. Started a clinical trial just 2 weeks ago to give this drug now to 24 other Castleman's patients. And it's also given me the time to get married to my wife. We made it to our wedding day, and we just had a daughter 1 year ago.
So this drug has worked for you. How has it worked for other patients?
So it's been given to about 10 other Castleman disease patients, and out of those 10 patients, about half of them have improved and the other half have not improved. And so it makes us so thankful and so happy when we see these patients get better on this drug. It's almost hard to put into words what it's like. There's a 13-year-old boy named Joey from Philadelphia who didn't respond to first-line therapy or second-line and was really running out of options and had just a beautiful response to this treatment, and that touched my heart in a way that's really hard to put into words. But there's also patients that don't respond to this drug, patients that this drug did not work for and that passed away battling this disease, even young patients. So we're constantly reminded that we still have work to do and that we should be really excited about our progress, but we need to continue to push forward our research.
When we come back, David tells us more about the disease that nearly took his life, the symptoms, and why people with Castleman's are often misdiagnosed.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Come home to the Southern Gospel Station from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites. CBN Southern Gospel. Available now at cbnradio.com.
Although David FAJGENBAUM came back from the brink of death, his fight is far from over. He's now in the process of raising awareness and research dollars for a disease few know much about.
A little bit about Castleman disease. A lot of folks aren't familiar with it. How prevalent is it, and what are those first symptoms? You said that it can affect children as well as adults.
That's right. Castleman disease is diagnosed in about 5,000 patients each year in the U.S., so that's about as common as ALS, but Castleman disease is much less well known of. There are 3 subtypes of Castleman disease. My subtype is the most deadly. A third of us will die within 5 years of diagnosis, and another third will die within 10 years of diagnosis. And unfortunately, patients can be diagnosed at any age. So we have patients that are diagnosed before their first birthday, and patients who are diagnosed much later in life, in their 60s or 70s. So it's a really unpredictable disease, and it's devastating that it can hit people when they least expect it. But we are trying to be as relentless in our fight against Castleman disease as it is in its fight against us.
Is it genetic? Do you often wonder, how did I get this?
We wonder that a lot, and a lot of our research is really focused on what's the etiology. The subtype I have, we call it idiopathic multicentric Castleman disease. Idiopathic meaning we don't know the cause of it. And in medicine, I've learned that anytime a disease has idiopathic at the beginning of it, you know that that's going to be a hard disease to treat, because if you don't know what causes it, it's really hard to control. And so we think there is a genetic component to idiopathic multicentric Castleman disease, and actually my research lab is trying to tease that apart. We found a genetic mutation that we're really interested in that we think could be potentially causing it, but there's more research before we can say that definitively.
Is Castleman disease often misdiagnosed?
It's misdiagnosed all the time. Castleman disease patients like myself, when we get sick so quickly, some doctors think that maybe we have lymphoma. Other doctors think maybe we have a really severe case of lupus, or maybe we have some really intense, crazy infection that no one knows what that is, because you're so sick so quickly. It looks kind of like a patient with sepsis when you're in the intensive care unit, and a lot of things can cause sepsis, and so it's hard to diagnose. And when you have a disease that's so poorly, or when there's so little awareness of it, doctors oftentimes haven't heard it since medical school, and so it's not at the top of their mind. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, Chasing My Cure, is that I want to raise awareness about Castleman disease to doctors, to patients, to the general public. We need people to know that it exists, know about it, know what to look for, so that way we can help patients.
Again, quickly, overview of the symptoms.
Sure. So patients start out with kind of flu-like symptoms, so night sweats, fatigue, weight loss. That can sometimes progress then into noticing fluid accumulating around your body due to kidney failure and liver failure. And then patients will often have issues with their blood cells. So they might have too low of their platelet count or their red blood cells. And so these are things that doctors start saying, this is kind of strange. A lot of times the first concern is that it is lymphoma, but then additional testing needs to be done to determine that it is in fact Castleman disease.
Are people mostly diagnosed in young adulthood or youth? In other words, not when they're 50, 60, 70, like so many other diseases?
Castleman's is so interesting because it affects people of all ages, and so though there are more patients in their 30s to 50s that are diagnosed, it affects individuals of all ages. So you see patients, as I mentioned, less than 1 year old all the way through 70. And so it's kind of unusual because most diseases have a really clear age range, but Castleman disease kind of hits anyone at any age.
David says in the process of discovering the treatment for his disease, he also learned a valuable life lesson that applies to all of us. He'll tell us what that is when we come back.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times best-selling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts, in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
Now for the conclusion of my interview with David FAJGENBAUM, author of Chasing My Cure.
You discovered something interesting about hope and faith and action.
That's right.
Talk about that.
Sure. So early on in my battle with Castleman disease, I hoped and I prayed that I would find the right doctor and they would find the right treatment for me, and that it would heal me and that I could go back to my mission of becoming a cancer doctor so I could treat cancer patients in memory of my mom who passed away while I was in college. And when I kept relapsing and relapsing, and eventually the fourth time that I almost died, I learned that there were no more drugs in development, that there were really no more leads even, or reason to be hopeful that maybe a drug could help me. And that's when I realized that I could no longer just hope and wish and pray that these drugs would be developed by someone somewhere, that if I really wanted a treatment and if I really wanted to be able to get married to Caitlin and to have a family and to have a future, then I needed to reflect on what I was hoping for and praying for, which in that case was a treatment and a cure, and turn that into action. What could I do to get us closer to that future of having treatments? And so I learned that it's not either hope and prayers or action. I learned that we need to listen to our hopes and our prayers. What are we praying for? What are we hoping for? And then we need to ask ourselves, what can we do to turn that into reality? How can we turn our hopes and our prayers into action?
That is so profound, and you think it really kind of spills over into all of life, right?
I think so. I think that if it's important enough to us to pray for it, if it's important enough to us to wish for it, then to me, that seems like the most important things that we should do on a daily basis. You know, every prayer and every hope that we have, reflecting and saying, what are the things that I can do today? Or what are the things that my family can do today to get us closer to that? And in my case, I was a medical student, but I had never conducted laboratory research before. I certainly had some medical knowledge, but didn't have all the skills I needed, and I had a lot that I had to learn. But I knew that I could take a first step and I could start to learn and I could start to get involved. And I know that not everyone with a disease can go into a lab and start studying it, but everyone with a disease can help to raise awareness for that disease. Everyone with a disease can help to raise funds for research for that disease. Everyone can do their part, and I think it's important for all of us to, when we do pray for something, when we hope for something, that we think about what is the thing that we can do to get that hope closer to reality.
That is such a great message for people to give them hope when they feel like they're hopeless. They're really not.
That's exactly right. I hope that my story, Chasing My Cure, is able to share an example with people that at a point where my doctor basically told me I had no reason to be hopeful. I really should have been hopeless. But because I wanted this so badly, because I wanted to be able to get married to Caitlin, that I wanted to be able to have a family, that I wanted to be able to continue to fight diseases in my career, I started to turn those hopes into action. And it's through the little iterative steps and the progress that I could get more hopeful. And so with every little bit of action, that made me more hopeful. And it created almost a cycle of hope and action and prayers. And the more I did of each, the more that I got closer to the future that I wanted.
That's all the time we have for now. Once again, the book is Chasing My Cure by Dr. David FAJGENBAUM. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.